ventures. The major subdivision is a proposal for 14 residential lots on approximately 75 acres. Access will be provided by a new private road traveling southward from Scarcello Road. Each lot will have individual wells and individual septic systems. The project site is located south of Scarcello Road, approximately 3/4 of a mile west of Ramsey Road. Looking at the aerial, the prominent uses in the area are residential and agricultural, but there is also a substation run by Kootenai Electric Co-op. There is also a restricted surface mine, and there is also Dino Noble, which is a blasting agent manufacturing facility, and I'll give more details on that later in my presentation. The parcel is zoned rural. A majority, pretty much the surrounding area is all rural, except for the area where that restricted surface mine is located, which is purple. According to the comprehensive plan map, it is in the country land use designation, which does promote subdivisions for both residential and non-residential uses. If we look at the photographs, the area is very flat, little to no slope, and is grassland. When we reached out to public agencies, our building division provided building permit requirements for future owners when they go to build. Lakes Highway District emphasized that it is the 2023 Associated Highway District standards that would apply in this case, and they requested necessary dedication such as right-of-way and additional setbacks. In this case, it was a 75-foot setback from the right-of-way, from the public right-of-way. Panhandle Health District provided their standard letter for septic permit requirements. Northern Lakes Fire District also provided standards for the International Fire Code with regard to access, road, cul-de-sac, and any street sign requirements. The Department of Fish and Game provided some wildlife-friendly language they asked to be included in the CC&Rs. And the Idaho Department of Water Resources provided information on well requirements. And during the public comment period, we did not receive any comments. So the road will be new. So regardless as to whether it's public or private, it is required by our code to meet Associated Highway District standards. So when they submit their site disturbance permit, we will include the Highway District in that review. For the final subdivision application, it is required that we get copies of the associated documents for restricted covenants, so your CC&Rs, and any homeowners association bylaws and articles of incorporation. The applicant will be required to comply with all public agency requirements. The applicant is required to construct that road, that private road, or provide financial guarantee in lieu of improvements prior to plat recordation. Upon the road's construction, we do require warranty bonds, which is a 10% cost of the road, and that is in place for a year to ensure the road still remains in good standing. So more about the blasting agent manufacturing facility and explosive storage that is right next door. So looking at Kootenai County records, Kootenai County did issue 2 conditional use permits, one in 1988 and one in 2000. And based on that information, this facility has been there since the 1960s. And I do have maps after this slide to coincide with this one. But essentially there are 3 buildings that have a no-build radius that will affect this subdivision. And this is based on the 2000 CUP order of decision. We have Building 10, Building 3, and Building 2, and the production facility, and specifically the blasting agent on site, it is for ammonium nitrate fertilizer and diesel fuel. The acronym for that is ANFO, and so you'll see how many pounds of each of that material is stored in each structure. And so when I go to the next slide here, this is a map that we got from the 2000 decision. And so Building 10, 3, and 2 are what are going to affect this subdivision. We had our GIS staff, and I do want to give credit to Adam Knight, who helped us with this map. He took the information from the 2000 order of decision and put, as you can see, those 3 buildings in blue, and he put the no build radiuses around each. So when we overlay that with the subdivision, the lots in question that will be affected will be 4, 5, and 6, and 7 of Block 1. And so when we did some measurements, Lot 6 is the most affected, and we find that there's about approximately 220 feet of distance between the road and the closest no-build zone. And staff does find that this is enough room to place a building envelope to still build outside the no-build zone. We are also, as a condition of approval, going to require that a note be placed on the plat that puts future owners on notice of where they're located. And I stand for any questions that you have.
I don't have any at this time. Thank you, Amy. Okay, Connie.
I'm going to give Amy just a second to pull up the presentation. Okay, my name is Connie Kruger. My address is 1859 North Lakewood Drive, Suite 102, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho, 83814. And I'm here representing the owners of this property, and they're actually all seated off to the left here in attendance tonight. So, of course, as the applicant, we have the burden of proof of ensuring that we meet the county's development standards. And so I will replicate some of the information that Amy has already provided. So you may hear things that seem a little bit redundant, but I just want to be sure I'm thorough. I don't see her presentation and she doesn't see mine. So just like to make sure we're covering everything. And hopefully I can click. Doesn't seem to be. Okay. So this is the location of the property. So if you take a look at the map on the left-hand side, that shows basically the driving directions from where we're at tonight out to the property. And just generally speaking, this is just to the southeast of Spirit Lake. And you can see the property over on the right-hand side. There are 3 little pins in that because there are actually 3 parcels of property. When we first started this project, we started each of these as minor subdivisions. And the staff said, hey, why don't you come in and we'll talk about possibly doing a major subdivision. And so we talked about it, and the owners voluntarily chose to enter into a major subdivision versus 3 minors for their ease, for the ease of the county, for a variety of different reasons. I may have to have you advance for me. Okay, some key items tonight. We'll dive into each of these a little bit more in the presentation, but just the highlights. We're in an area that's zoned rural. It is a 5-acre minimum lot size, and single-family residential is a use of right in the zone district. We're located in a rural residential area where rural properties and services exist. And Highway 41 and West Scarcello are state highways and major collectors. And so really well-developed road systems that are capable of carrying our traffic volumes. And as just a 14-lot development, this is a fairly low-volume traffic generator directly onto those systems. We are located in an area where there are public services. There are areas in the county where there aren't public services available, but we're in an area that's very well serviced by Northern Lakes, Lakes Highway District, Lakeland School District, and we also have emergency response through the Sheriff's Department, Lakes Fire District, and Kootenai County Emergency Medical. We have worked in advance with Lakes Highway District. The owner actually does own property on the north side of the road, and so we have been working with Lakes on intersection alignments, other developments that are occurring in the area, and proximity of our approach to those. So we started that work with them fairly early on. As Amy has mentioned, and as we'll highlight, the agencies have all approved or commented, and some of them have development-related conditions. And we will be serviced by utilities and roads that will be constructed at the cost of the owners. And when I say the owners, the roads and the stormwater systems will be constructed by the current owners, and then future owners will construct well and septic at the time of building permit. And we will pay taxes and fees that will help to mitigate specific service and infrastructure impacts into the future. So here's the layout of the project, and again, 14 lots. We range in size from 5 acres to 7.5 acres. If you look at the 2 lots that are on the south, those are the 2 lots that are greater than 7 acres in size. And we'll talk a little bit later with the Dino Nobel, how that may be something that we use a little bit to our advantage here. Again, this is a private road. It will be maintained by the lot owners, but designed to a Lakes Highway District standard. We access directly onto West Scarcello, and we will connect to the south. So if you take a look at the plat, you can see an easement connection continuing through to the south for any future owners in the area. There's another subdivision, Humbird Acres. It's almost an identical layout to this, directly to the east. Comprehensive plan designation, we are in the Selkirk sub-area, and our future land use designation is country. And when we look at the language from the comprehensive plan, there are basically 2 primary purposes for the country designation. The first is actually kind of twofold, which is agricultural activities and then residential subdivisions. So I've just kind of highlighted the relevant segments of that, but subdivisions are allowed, and they are to be designed to reduce the need to extend infrastructure over long distances. And then the second purpose is to promote economic activities that minimize environmental impacts and do not require full range of services. And so you'll see at the bottom that I have a note about the fact that we have on-site utilities with our larger lot sizes. There are cottage industries that homeowners would be able to engage in under the current county regulations that would also promote economic activities. So we kind of have a nice blend of residential subdivision with that opportunity. Not that everyone will necessarily take advantage of that, but when you have a larger lot, it's a little more feasible to do that. Moving on to the zoning designation, we are in the rural zone, and this is a zone district which the land has been found to be suitable for rural residential uses, which again is what we're proposing. Minimum lot size is 5 acres. We range from 5 to 7.5, and I have the setbacks there. And so our statement to this is that we're designed consistent with the allowed uses, bulk, and density standards of the county zoning code. And again, our planned uses are single-family residences primarily, which are a use of right in the zone district. This is the surrounding zoning. Amy has hit on this, but again, you can see that all of the property around us is zoned the same way as ours, and so any property in that area would have the same zoning and related development rights. This is our surrounding land use, so you can see that to the northeast and south that we have rural. We actually do have kind of rural on the property to the west of us, but we found out a little bit more that we actually have some additional land uses in that, so we'll talk about that on the next slide. So the information on the COP and really kind of the presence of the Dino Nobel facility was brought to our attention about a week and a half ago. So staff was very proactive in contacting us, discussing this with us. We came in and met with them and, kind of said, hey, they were already engaged in mapping, but let's, get that mapping in front of us, look at how this impacts our potential project. So this is actually from one of the staff maps that was sent to us, and these show kind of a close-up view of those buildings that have the blast radiuses. And you'll know from reading the staff report that those vary depending on what is actually within each building. And so moving on, this shows a highlight of our plat and then the different blast radii around that. And so with that, we have looked at the staff recommended conditions, which are the building envelope restrictions on Block 1, lots 4, 5, 6, and 7, with a note on the plat requiring that structures be located in those envelopes, and then a note on the plat notifying future landowners of the adjacent facility. And all of those are conditions that we think are appropriate, that we would agree to. And then as a final note, going back to what I brought up about the 7-acre lots down on the south side, we do have some ability to kind of, work a little bit with the lot configuration in that area. And so as we move forward with our site disturbance permitting, we may look at, maybe pushing that local access road a little bit to the east as it kind of gets down into this area. And I did talk to Amy about that, if that was appropriate to do with final platting, and she said that that was an appropriate exercise to do. So we'll take a look at that. Moving on to the existing landscape and environmental conditions, again, very flat. There are no wetlands, riparian areas, or floodplains, and the soils are well drained, so there are no hydric soils. So we think that we're environmentally suited for this type of development, and also that we would have little impact to critical environmental areas. Moving on to transportation, I mentioned earlier, West Scarcello is a major collector, and if you take a look at the map in the upper right-hand corner, that is actually a functional classification map, and you can see the little purple line right up there, right outside of Spirit Lake. And so what that is showing is it's showing that designation of Scarcello as major collector. So it's intended to carry a high volume of traffic in regional traffic. Our internal private road system, we've already discussed that it will be constructed to the public road standards. We will be required to design for a turn lane and for approach design on West Scarcello. And we will be looking a little bit more at that approach location on both Scarcello as well as at the end of the cul-de-sac for the approaches for the last 2 lots. And we do have options to put that road in an easement or a tract, but it will be something that is private and maintained by the future lot owners. Trip generation, we have 3 existing lots and 11 new lots. So generally speaking, what we look at is we look at the increase by adding additional lots. So we would look at 11 new lots. And the IT trip generation manual uses 9.44 vehicle trips per day. So that would be an increase of 103.84. So usually what you do is you look at the turning movement during peak hour traffic, and it ends up being, just a fraction of that amount. So we really are seeing that we don't have a substantial demand on public systems, so kind of getting back to the intent of the comprehensive plan designation, the zoning designation. We're, fairly self-sufficient, not requiring additional road upgrades, other things in the area. And again, we'll be maintaining our own internal infrastructure. Utilities, each lot will have its own well, and that will be constructed by the future lot owner. We do have a hydrogeologic report that has been prepared, and that has indicated that we can comply with the county's potable water standards. Northern Lakes can respond. Thank you.
I didn't want you to triple.
No, I appreciate that. And they would respond to the site using their engine and basically their water trucks. And because of the lot size, by state law, fire hydrants would not be required in that area. There is no need to put any easements on any of the adjacent lots. Everything is of a size that it can be handled within the lot itself. Similar to water, sewer, each lot will have its own septic tank and drain field. This is located over the aquifer, so test holes are not required, and additional easements on other property are not needed. So looking at zoning comp plan, we're not creating a demand on any public utility systems because that will be the responsibility of the individual lot owner. Agency comments, Amy covered this, but we've just kind of gone through here to show you that we've looked at these, we're aware of what they are. Most of these seem to be pretty standard development conditions. I think the only exception to that was Lakes Highway District. And the items that were of note with Lakes Highway District are the ones that were called out in the slide that I just covered. So just approach locations, things like that. So with that, the owner would accept the conditions of approval that are recommended by the staff and the agency requirements. And these are the county standards that we have the requirement to comply with in order to obtain approval. So we have provided the information that the staff is required to have a complete application. We have looked at, of course, the other development standards and whatnot of the county code and can comply with those. We don't need any variances. Everything is of sufficient size to work within the existing code. We are capable of complying with the requirements of all of the other agencies with jurisdiction. And this does contribute to orderly development of the area. It's compatible with other things that are happening in the area. Our lots are reasonably sized for utility and livability. And we have services and facilities that are present in the area. Our proposed roads will contribute to the transportation system, actually without additional impact to the public. And we spoke to the environment, and I don't see any risk to environmental degradation. And then public notice has been given by the county staff. So with that, we do believe that our proposal meets the standards of approval from Kootenai County Code. So available for any questions.
What's the timing if you get approval?
I'm sorry, the
What's
timing?
the timing? Yeah,
To move toward construction?
yeah.
It would probably move into construction in spring next year.
Will you have like a gated entry like Humbird does?
That's not planned right now, yeah. And we have talked about it, and early on, it was kind of no, that we probably wouldn't do that. But
And will you have like a ganged mailbox situation?
more than likely, the post office will require that. It seems like they're requiring that more and more often for subdivisions. Yeah,
Going to be a lot of trees needed for that place.
yes. Yeah. I think they're all on the property next door to us,
I know,
actually.
it makes it
Yeah.
look particularly naked.
It's really interesting, actually, the contrast between the two. One's completely wooded and one's completely bare. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
thank you.
I have Brandon Garden. I apologize for mispronunciation. You may wish to speak. Okay. And Lisa Garden may wish to speak. Patrick Volcar does not wish to speak. Okay. And then I have Lauren Scarcello wishes to speak, who is neutral. Your name is on a lot out there.
Hopefully that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
So I'm Lawrence Scarcello. I reside at North 22389 Kevin Road, Rathdrum, America. I attend quite a few zoning meetings. It's interesting to me that often these lands are referred to as vacant. I'm venting here. I looked up vacant in Webster's dictionary. Any land has microbes in the soil that protects the aquifer. It's actively being grazed, but the vacant thing gets me. Our family land borders this parcel on two sides, totaling 3/4 of a mile of fence line. Our land has been in continuous agriculture production since 1910. Our goal is to continue in ag production as well. I understand the 5-acre rule in terms of development, but it should be duly noted that as neighboring lands are developed, it should not be to the detriment of existing uses of lands. Farming, ranching, timber harvest, other uses can have field dust, smoke, equipment, trucks, lights at various times and various days of the weeks. Sight, sound, smells are all part of this blue-collar type of work, all necessary to have a viable operation. New owners, no matter what the price of the home they build, should be aware of these uses and activities. It's not unlike moving next door to an airport. We strive to make our corner of the world a better place with sustainability in mind for the next 100 years as well. The county is proposing a $50 million bond to preserve open space, and the tribe is working toward that goal as well. These efforts are to protect our view shed, air shed, watershed, and the aquifer that lies beneath. Open space protection and allowing for open space uses, such as our century-old ranch, should be a part of this board's consideration. It may interest all parties concerned that on a regular basis, perfect strangers stop by as we are fixing fence or feeding cattle, etc., and thank us for not selling our land. People have said that our cattle is the reason they bought property close to us. Again, I am neutral in this development of these 5-acre tracts as long as it does not encumber the use of our lands. I can speak to the Dino Nobel, any Dino Nobel concerns. I'm happy to act as a liaison. This site was first permitted back in 1963. This is nothing new. It's been there for a while. They have proven to be good neighbors, no DEQ violations, panhandle health, or any other issues. At present, and I've discussed this with them, at present, the amount of product and the manner in which it is stored does not encumber this parcel that's to be considered. Again, I'm happy to work as a liaison with the new owners or the county, whatever. We can work on moving a magazine structure or whatever we have to do. But again, development of this should not encumber existing use of our lands. Dino Nobel, we leased that site to them. That's an important revenue stream for our operation, which is partly why we're still able to be there. It's a fabric of our society, and again, they've proven to be good neighbors since 1963. As always, I am available for questions, comments, or concerns. You got my number, and I believe Brandon and Lisa have my number too. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Any questions?
I don't. Thank you for your testimony.
You bet.
Do we have anyone on Zoom?
Yes, Madam Hearing Examiner, there's one person, don't know if she's here for this item, Margaret Moss, if you'd like to speak. Margaret Moss, if you'd like to speak to this item, please unmute yourself at this time. Apparently, she's here for the next item. Oh, no, here
Yep.
she comes.
Correct. I'm for the next item. Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
I'm
then
going to mute again.
we have an opportunity for rebuttal, if the applicant has any.
Really nothing to rebut. I think the only thought, as Lauren was speaking, is just the thought that with those ongoing ag operations, the owners of these lots will have the opportunity to, grow trees, do different things where they can kind of buffer themselves from some of that activity. And I'm sure that they'll, gain awareness and that they'll, choose how they want to work with that over time. So that's really my only comment. So,
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I grew up on a ranch with a lot of cows, and I loved watching them play. It just made me smile every time I saw a cow run and frolic. Like, who knew?
My dad would sit in the chair in an evening and watch his cattle graze, and he claimed that was herd management.
Okay, that concludes our hearing this evening on MSP 22-0009. Thank you. And now we'll move on to VAR 23-0007.
Good evening, Madam Hearing Examiner. For the record, Vlad Finkel with Kootenai County Community Development. This is a request for a front yard variance by Mr. and Mrs. Sonneland on a parcel of land located in the agricultural suburban zone. The subject property is located within Kootenai County on the west side of Coeur d'Alene Lake, specifically in the Kidd Island Bay area. The property is currently vacant or undeveloped. I would probably use that as a better term. There's been significant amount of vegetation that's been recently removed. There's a residence next door that's under construction as well, or it's near completion. Before I get into the specifics of this request, I'd like to point out that from the inception of this project, when staff met with the applicant and their architect for a potential variance, there was a concern that was raised with regard to the current status of Boyson Loop. Typically, and that's very common throughout the county, when you have a public road, more than likely it is maintained by the highway district, meaning that they own the right-of-way and they provide maintenance to that road, including improvements as well as plowing in the winter months. However, in this case, the road, it's been determined just recently, is within a public right-of-way, but it has never been accepted into the Worley Highway District jurisdictional maintenance boundaries. What that means is that it's a public road that is privately maintained by the homeowners association. That has been the focal point of our discussion with the applicant as well as the highway district before we proceeded with the variance process, simply because, as you may know, there is a provision in the Kootenai County Land Use and Development Code that states a variance to a private road may be administratively approved by the community development director. The word "may be" is a discretionary measure that Director Callahan can exercise. He doesn't have to, but he may, and he has historically done so. That is one of the arguments that was made by the applicant before we move forward with a general variance. Once we got a formal response from the highway district that through their analysis and research that the road was public, officially a public right-of-way, but it wasn't maintained by them, it was maintained by the homeowners association. We determined with our legal counsel that it had to go through a general review process. I want to clarify that for the record, for the applicants as well as any members of the public that may be listening, that we're going through the appropriate process and that this is a standard review, being that the request is to deviate from the front yard setback of a public right-of-way adjacent to said property. The applicants are seeking a 7-foot variance, meaning that the residence or the garage attached to the house will be 18 feet from the property line, front property line adjacent to Boyson Loop. The setbacks in the agricultural suburban zone for front yard are 25 feet. These are some of the photos that staff took upon a site visit. I believe the photos that were provided by the applicant were from last winter, and it was very difficult to assess whether what the property terrain looked like, even though we understood it was steep, but it was much more helpful to have more recent photos in the summer months. And so it is a very steep site. It does have significant amount of slope. Typically, when we deal with these types of applications, when undue hardship is considered to be steep slopes, we request that the applicant submits a geotechnical evaluation to assess whether the soil conditions are conducive to the potential development on this site. The applicant did submit a geotechnical evaluation, and the conclusions of that evaluations is that the geotech engineer states that, in their opinion, the subject site is suited for development from a geotechnical engineering standpoint, viewpoint. Of course, as part of the site disturbance permit process as well as building permit process, should the variance be approved, we have a condition of approval that the recommendations are incorporated into those processes. And that's a standard procedure. We did solicit comments from various agencies with jurisdiction, and all of them appear to be on board. The Highway District did not object to the variance request, even though they don't maintain it. And I'll get into the maintenance and some of the concerns later on in my presentation. One of the interesting comments that we did get was from Kettle Island Sewer District. And they stated that they have no objection, but they may have some requirements for residences that have more than 4 bedrooms. I don't necessarily know the number of bedrooms in this house, but as part of the building permit process, the sewer district will have an opportunity to comment, and they will potentially limit the number of bedrooms. Of course, the number of bedrooms is what drives the septic system and the drain field versus, the septic size and the community drain field aspect of it versus versus the bathroom facilities. It's always the sleeping quarters that directly address the occupancy of the residence. Everyone else, like I said, was on board. During the public comment period, we received a total of 7 comments, 4 in support and 3 in opposition. There were concerns raised with respect to the proximity of proposed structure to the road, because it's been argued by some members of the public that it would be difficult to plow the road in the winter months. When I visited the property, I did notice that there were some structures that were in closer proximity to the road than this structure. And I do understand that the road is quite narrow. However, being that the residence will still be 18 feet away from the public right-of-way, we find that there's sufficient room for the maintenance of the road as well as plowing it in the winter months. A question may be asked, I don't know if you saw in the photos, that there's a residence next door that's under construction right now. And in my research, that individual did not request a variance. However, I did have a question, why is it that this structure we need it? How is it different? First of all, I don't know whether the slope conditions before the structure was constructed were identical. It's possible that we're slightly different, but I'd like to point out that there is an existing driveway on an adjoining parcel that provides access to another property, and it was constructed before the adjoining property that's currently under construction and being in place. So we believe that the existing built environment for the adjoining property was different, being that the driveway was in place and that new structure could be located 25 feet away from the property line, whereas in this case, if you visited the property, you could tell that it slopes right beyond the point of where the road surface is for Boyson Loop. So I think there is a subtle difference in the 2 adjoining parcels. We find that the road can be sufficiently maintained and plowed in the winter months due to the location of the structure. We find that there is an existing hardship, specifically steep slopes. We find that the proposal is not a self-imposed hardship. The Highway District had no concerns, and we find that it's a variance that should be granted approval. And I stand for any questions that you have for me at this time.
I don't have anything for you, Vlad, right now. Thanks. Greg Creighton?
Good evening. My name is Greg Creighton. I reside at 3115 West Boone Avenue in Spokane, Washington. I'm an architect and represent the owners tonight. When the Sonlands first approached me about this project, we went and visited the site, and the thing that makes this site unique is that there's 5 feet of rise across the front 66 feet. So this site plan, the right corner there is, call it I think it was 2180, and the left corner is 2185. And after a brief discussion, it was clear that the best way to access the site was to stay low and come in on that right corner, the bottom right of the screen. You can see the 25-foot setback line passing through the corner of the garage. Vlad, would you help point that out?
You actually have
Oh.
a laser you can push on the circle.
How about that? Okay. All right, there's the 25-foot setback line passing through the front corner of the house. So the entire face of the garage is not inside the setback. It's this corner right here and a little piece right there. So as you can see, there's plenty of room to park full-size vehicles there. In fact, we're hoping to get a couple more over here. And I'll go into it a little bit later about how we intend to manage snow as well. So our goal was to achieve a driveway that had modest downward slope or to be level. On lot 12, oh boy, I hit the wrong thing. There we go, okay. Lot 12, you can see the topo lines here. All of a sudden they bend around, and this grading was done a long, long time ago. And this entire front section is dead flat at 2185. The home that's under construction there, as far as I could tell, and I have a set of their drawings, is at 2185. The elevation, the GFE figures there, that's garage finished elevation, we are at 2180. So call it rough 5 feet between these two. This home is a 1-story from the roadway, but on the rear, it's a full 3. It's quite tall in the back. Another one of our goals is to preserve the view lines from above by making this piece as low as possible and then stepping the roof down as it goes. This section in the back is 2 stories high. The highest part of the house is actually kind of in the middle, and has a living space on top of the garage. The wall is lower over here. We did that intentionally to keep the height down. So we're managing the height of this structure on all 4 sides. Let's see here, access to the site. I brought with me tonight a diagram that shows the height of the structures as well, as best I could. Is there a way to present that?
You can submit that into the record.
That will be P 2001.
So on that diagram, it shows a schematic elevation of the home that's being finished on lot 12 on your left, and then the proposed dwelling on the right. The one thing that's a little bit confusing on that diagram is, although the heights are within 6 inches, the garage being at 45 degrees was difficult to show in a drawing like that. So the view you have in that is actually looking straight at this piece on this angle. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. Just looking at some of the numbers on that diagram, his tallest piece of the garage is at 2201, and our tallest piece of our garage is at 2205. They're 4 feet different. Despite being one's a 2-story and one's a 1-story, we're only 4 feet taller. And that's to the peak of that shed roof you see there. I wanted to address a little bit of the concerns that came in for people who have concerns in the neighborhood. Parking was one, and I think I addressed that there. There will be no problem parking. There's the front property line there. We're well inside of it. We have extra parking over here. Snow management, what we intend to do is to push snow over here and right over here. And I've had some experience with snow country design. I've done 3 major buildings at Schweitzer Mountain Resort. including one that I built myself. And so I've had some experience with that. I understand there are concerns about the narrowness of the road, and the best thing that we can do is to make sure we're completely clear and that our owners know that we're not going to be parking along here. There's going to be a good-sized drop-off right there. I show a stone landscape wall right in there that's about 4 feet high. I believe that's all I have to share. We feel like we've worked very hard on this design to make it compatible with the neighborhood, to preserve view lines, parking, safety, snow management, and building height, of course. So that's all I have to share. Thank you very much.
Stuart,
Yeah.
wish to speak?
I'm Stuart Sonneland. Hi. Stuart Sonneland. I reside at 1019 West 21st Avenue, Spokane. And I think I just wanted to add to what Greg said, that when we first started talking about the design, the imperative was a home that would really fit within the topography and be, really aesthetically pleasing. And to do that, again, to have the garage be lower, to improve view lines, did require this small 7-foot variance. And it's our hope that there'll be, in terms of the impact, there'll be a much greater positive impact by doing this variance. If we don't do the variance, the house will ultimately be higher than it would be with the variance. And so we hope that based on that, and again, based on the intent to build a home that really fits well within the topography, that the variance could be approved. Thank
Okay,
you.
thanks. And Patty does not wish to speak. Okay. Do we have, yes, on Zoom?
Margaret Moss, if you would like to speak to this issue, please unmute yourself and give us your address, and go ahead.
No, I don't have anything to say. But our address is 4323 South Vanilla Court, and we're also in the HOA association where this new build will occur.
Could you state that again a little bit slower? We didn't catch what you were saying.
Certainly. We live at 4323 South Vanilla Court. We also live in the same HOA community where this new build will occur, and that's why I had an interest in what is happening.
Okay, good. Thank you for having an interest. That's it?
That's it.
That's it.
Okay. Do you wish to rebut anything? I actually have some questions, if you want to come back up to the...
He's got the answers. That's why he's here.
Greg Creighton once again.
It seemed to me that the predominant drive pattern on this street was towards the south. How is this an easy access?
You're climbing a hill, so the low part is on the far right, and you're going uphill toward the bottom of the screen.
If you're coming from the other direction.
My understanding,
Going the right to left, it's one way.
my understanding, it's a one-way road,
That's what I thought, but I thought it was going
other way.
interesting. Every car on it was parked going that way today.
I think there's some misuse of that, yeah. Because it's not very clear that the one-way, Stuart would be better to answer that as far as where these signs are and what the,
I don't think there's a one-way sign. I think it's just kind of, we've always seen people going.
So they go down Kid Island Road, past the first, and then come back. Okay, well then that makes better sense. Because otherwise it looked like, Yeah,
Every time I've come to the property, I go past the first option and come back around and then climb the hill to the site. And it is very narrow, 12 feet or so of pavement, yeah. So
Right.
it doesn't look like a two-way road in any way, shape, or form.
yeah. Okay. Then that pretty much addresses my biggest issue.
Okay.
Got to get all those people parked in the right direction.
We'll work on that.
Okay, if there's nothing else, then that concludes our hearing this evening on VAR 23-0007. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.